The marble kitchen was bright enough to feel like an interrogation room. Morning light pressed through the tall windows and turned every surface into a clean blade. The counter, the faucet, the silent art on the wall that cost more than a year of rent for most people below. A clock inside the penthouse kept time with a dry insistence. Each beat made the air tighter. Gabriel Charlton moved through the space like he owned the oxygen. His suit was perfect. His tie was straight. His leather shoes struck stone with a controlled tap that sounded like decision. His phone lay heavy in his hand, screen dark, notifications muted. He had silenced the world, but the clock would not be silenced. Behind him, Jennifer followed with a tablet and a coffee. She walked fast, but she still stayed 3 steps back, as if the space around him had rules. "Mr. Charlton, the call starts in 7 minutes. San Diego is already on. We need Naperville before you speak." Gabriel lifted one hand without turning. "Not now." Across the kitchen, Alice Donovan stood by the sink with her phone to her ear. She looked like someone trying to hold herself together by force. Her shoulders were rigid. Her free hand hovered over the counter, trembling as if the air was cold. Her voice was barely there. "I am sorry. I will figure it out. I promise." The words cut through the morning. Gabriel stopped so suddenly Jennifer almost collided with him. The tablet edge bumped her coffee lid. A tiny splash stained the side. She did not react. She just watched him, confused, irritated, afraid to speak again. Alice turned. The moment she saw him, panic flashed across her face. She lowered the phone too fast, like she had been caught stealing something invisible. "I am so sorry. I did not hear you. I was just finishing the dishes. I will get back to work." The apology was automatic. It was polished. It was practiced. It was the kind of apology someone learns when their livelihood depends on being smaller than the room. Gabriel felt something sharp twist under his ribs. Annoyance. Discomfort. A strange irritation at the fact that he could not walk past her without noticing her. "What is wrong?" he asked. The question surprised him. It surprised her more. Alice blinked as if she had not expected to be spoken to like a person. "Nothing. Everything is fine. Just a personal matter. It will not affect my work." Jennifer cleared her throat. "Careful. Mr. Charlton, we really have to go." Gabriel did not move. He studied Alice like a sheet of numbers, searching for what had been hidden. He saw details that had always been there, now impossible to ignore. The faint chemical burns along her knuckles, the roughness of her fingertips, the way exhaustion sat behind her eyes like a second life she carried home after this one. There was intelligence in her restraint, education in the way she chose every word. She was not chaos. She was containment. "How long have you been struggling?" he asked. Alice swallowed. Shame flickered, then steadied. "I do not want to burden you. You have been kind employing me. I am grateful." "How long?" Gabriel repeated. Quieter. The clock kept counting down. 7 minutes was a threat now. A deadline with teeth. Alice exhaled. A small surrender. 6 months. Maybe longer. "My daughter has asthma. The medication is expensive. Our rent increased twice. This month the pharmacy said our insurance lapsed. I owe for 3 months of prescriptions. I do not have it." 6 months. The number landed like a blow. A woman had been cleaning his home for years while her child struggled to breathe, and he had never asked a single question because asking would have required seeing. Jennifer shifted behind him, voice tightening. "Mr. Charlton, the call starts in minutes." Gabriel heard his father's voice like a blade being drawn from its sheath. "Richard Charlton. Wetka. A study that smelled of leather and certainty. Trust is the currency fools waste. Generosity without control is stupidity in an expensive suit. People behave when money is watching. Gabriel had built his life around that doctrine. Oversight, documentation, parameters, always protected, always watching. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. Alice stiffened, almost imperceptibly, as if she expected a lecture and a small bill, as if she was already preparing to accept humiliation with gratitude because survival demanded it. Gabriel slid out a black card instead. It was simple, smooth, heavy, a piece of power with no visible limit. It looked wrong in this room suddenly, like a weapon laid on a dinner table. Alice stared at it. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I do not understand. Gabriel stepped closer. The city beyond the window moved in a blur. Cars like tiny pulses, far below. In the glass, his reflection appeared faintly, his face layered over Chicago. For a moment he looked like a man, watching himself make a mistake. Take it, he said. Alice did not reach for it. Her hands hovered, shaking. This is a test, she whispered. People like you do not do this. He did not deny it. The truth was colder than any lie. I want to know if my father was right, Gabriel said. I want to know what someone does when no one is watching. Jennifer stepped forward, voice low. Urgent. Mr. Charlton, this is reckless. There should be rules. There should be protection. No rules, Gabriel said. His voice stayed steady. The clock did not. No limits. No surveillance. Tomorrow morning, I look, the words tasted foreign, like he was speaking a language he had spent decades refusing to learn. He held the card out again. This time, Alice lifted her hand. When the card touched her palm, it made a faint metallic clink, cold and expensive, a heavy sound that felt like a door locking. The metal chilled her skin. Her fingers closed slowly around it, not greedy, not excited, defensive, like she expected it to burn. 24 hours, Gabriel said. Alice looked up at him, eyes wet, spine straight. Why me? Because I am tired of assumptions, Gabriel said. Because I need an answer. Jennifer's voice cracked with disbelief. She could disappear. She could spend everything. Gabriel turned toward his office. If he stayed 1 second longer, he would retreat into the comfort of control. He could feel that retreat waiting for him like a warm coat. Then I will have my answer, he said. He walked away. The door shut with a soft click that sounded too gentle for the cruelty of what he had just done. Alice stood alone in the kitchen with the black card in her hand. The penthouse smelled like polished stone and lemon cleanser. The clock kept counting down. The city kept moving behind glass. Indifferent. Alice stared at the card as if it was both a lifeline and a trap. Her hands shook. She slipped it into her pocket anyway, and the silence of the penthouse swallowed her whole. If justice stories are your thing, hit subscribe. We dive in now. Gabriel shut his office door, and the penthouse sound changed. The kitchen clock was farther away now, but it still found him through the walls. A thin, dry ticking that refused to let the moment die. His desk faced the river. Glass towers cut the sky into clean rectangles. The city looked obedient from up here, as if money had organized it into something sensible. Jennifer hovered near the doorway, holding her tablet like a shield. They are on the line, she said. San Diego is waiting. Gabriel did not sit right away. He set his phone on the edge of the desk, screen up, as if it might bite. He slid his laptop open. The camera light blinked once. The meeting chime sounded soft and professional. His eyes kept drifting to the phone, to the black mirror of the screen, to the quiet threat of what could appear there. Jennifer lowered her voice. I have to say this again. You gave her unrestricted access. No parameters. No documentation. You are exposed. He loosened his tie by a fraction. The silk felt too tight against his throat. "That is the point," Gabriel said. Jennifer stared at him as if she had never heard him say something so reckless without laughing. The meeting audio began, a chorus of polite greetings and compressed impatience. A man asked about timelines. Another asked about projected margins. Names and numbers spilled out with the confident rhythm of people who had never felt hunger make decisions for them. Gabriel answered automatically. His voice sounded normal. His body did not. His fingers slid toward his phone without permission. He tapped the screen. The banking app opened with a clean corporate glow. Transaction history, current balance. The card was there like a loaded weapon he had handed to a stranger. He stared at the empty line where a charge would appear. Nothing. He forced his eyes back to the laptop. He said to the screen, "The Naperville terms are acceptable. We can move the close date forward." His gaze snapped back to the phone again. He refreshed. The motion was small, but it felt intimate. A private ritual. His fingertip hovered, then pressed, and the screen flickered as if it were inhaling. No new activity. He should have felt relieved. Instead, irritation crawled up his spine. Silence was never neutral. Silence was someone thinking. Jennifer watched him now with the guarded stillness of an assistant, trying not to judge her employer to his face. Gabriel kept talking to the investors. He kept sounding calm. He kept winning deals with words, while his mind waited for proof of human nature. He refreshed again. No new activity. The air in the room felt too clean. The art on the wall felt like it was watching him. He remembered his father's voice with the clarity of something carved into bone. Trust is the currency fools waste. People behave when money is watching. Gabriel had built an empire on that sentence. He had lived as if generosity was a trap, as if kindness without control was stupidity. Dressed in silk, now he had done the one thing his father would have called unforgivable. He had let go. He answered another question. He nodded at the laptop camera. He said the words they wanted. Meanwhile, his phone stayed quiet, mocking him with nothing. Gabriel did not know that the card in Alice's pocket was already bound by the only rule she trusted. Nothing for herself. He refreshed again. Still nothing. Minutes dragged. The meeting moved on. San Diego discussed schedules as if time were a resource they could purchase in bulk. Gabriel's attention slipped like a knife in wet hands. He pictured Alice's fingers closing around the card. Defensive, not thrilled. He pictured her standing in that bright kitchen with the clock counting down and his assistant demanding speed. He told himself she would do what anyone would do. Cash advance. Disappear. Reset her life. That was the story his father had written for him. That was the story Gabriel had believed for decades, because it was easier than believing something else. He refreshed again. Nothing. His jaw tightened. His foot tapped once against the floor, and the sound felt loud in the luxury of the room. Jennifer leaned closer, barely moving her lips. "Please, focus." Gabriel's eyes stayed on the phone. He ended one investor's question with a clipped answer and muted his microphone for a moment. The sudden silence in his office was sharp. He refreshed again. Nothing. The absence started to feel personal, like an insult. He pictured a shopping bag swinging from Alice's hand. He pictured a smile he did not believe in. He pictured a woman with nothing, deciding she was owed everything. His father's voice warmed with certainty. The desperate will bleed you dry and smile while doing it. Gabriel unmuted himself and finished the meeting like a machine. When it ended, the polite goodbyes vanished, and the screen went still. Jennifer exhaled as if she had been holding her breath. "We need to leave for the zoning commission in 15, she said. Gabriel did not answer. He stared at the phone until the screen dimmed and went dark. He tapped it awake again. He refreshed. Still nothing. Jennifer opened her mouth, then closed it. She stepped back, defeated by his silence. The office felt smaller now, as if the walls had crept closer while he watched a blank transaction list. Then the phone vibrated, a sound like a small animal trapped in glass. Gabriel's heart kicked against his ribs. He grabbed the phone so fast it almost slipped. A notification banner lit the screen. Transaction alert. His thumb trembled as he opened it. He had negotiated deals worth millions without shaking. This felt worse. The details loaded. Myers Pharmacy, 63rd Street, Chicago. Amount, $39.17. Gabriel stared at it, not breathing, waiting for the line to change into something that made sense. Something luxurious, something greedy, something that proved the story he had been taught. It stayed the same, $39.17. His mouth went dry. He lowered himself into his chair as if his legs had stopped trusting him. Outside the window, the river kept moving. The city kept shining. On his screen, a single charge sat there like a bruise, and Gabriel realized he had no idea what that amount could mean. Gabriel kept staring until the numbers stopped looking like numbers and started looking like an accusation. The app glow washed his knuckles pale. $39.17. A pharmacy, 63rd Street, a neighborhood name that meant nothing to him beyond a vague map in his head. A place he drove past on the way to somewhere else and never considered stopping. Jennifer spoke from behind him, careful, like she was approaching a skittish animal. The zoning commission. Gabriel did not look up. He zoomed in on the merchant details. Address line, zip code, a clean pin on a digital map. It felt absurd that a life could be reduced to coordinates. He tapped again. The screen loaded slower than he wanted, as if the phone was punishing him for needing it. Category, pharmacy. No luxury. No travel. No cash advance. His throat tightened. Cancel it, Gabriel said. Jennifer blinked. That meeting has been scheduled for weeks. They will not res. Cancel it, he repeated, and the edge in his voice made the words land like a door slammed shut. The silence that followed was thick. Jennifer's eyes searched his face for the version of him she recognized. She did not find it. He stood so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. The sound was sharp in the office, the same kind of sharp that had lived in his father's voice. Gabriel grabbed his coat from the back of the chair. The fabric slid under his fingers like water. "Where are you going?" Jennifer asked. "I need to see something." His own words surprised him. It was not curiosity. It was compulsion, as if the charge had hooked into his ribs and started pulling. He walked out before Jennifer could argue again. The hallway outside his office felt too quiet. The penthouse air was controlled, filtered, expensive. It smelled like nothing. The elevator waited at the end of the corridor, doors reflecting his face back at him. He pressed the button. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. He stepped in and watched the numbers descend. Each floor felt like losing altitude in a storm. The deeper he went, the less control the building allowed him to pretend he had. The mirrored walls showed a man in a perfect suit, with a jaw locked too tight. His father's voice crawled up from memory, low and amused. "One small charge. That is how it starts. They lull you." Gabriel clenched his hands in his pockets until his knuckles hurt. At street level, the lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and cologne. The doorman greeted him with practiced warmth. Gabriel barely heard it. He moved through the revolving door into Chicago air that felt colder than it should have. His driver opened the Mercedes door. The leather seat accepted him like a confession. 63rd Street, Gabriel said. The driver glanced back, surprised. The car pulled away from the building, and the city shifted. Glass and steel slid past the windows. People in clean coats walked fast. Restaurants with white tablecloths lined the street like subtle trophies. Gabriel's phone lay in his hand. the merchant address still on the screen, as if he needed proof to keep moving. Traffic carried them south. The skyline behind them thinned, towers giving way to lower buildings, older brick, fewer tourists. The streets looked different in a way that had nothing to do with architecture. The posture of the people changed, the way they held themselves, the way they watched cars. Gabriel sat upright, eyes scanning, as if he expected to be challenged for entering. The car passed a stretch where the sidewalks narrowed, and the storefront signs were hand-painted instead of illuminated. A bus groaned at a stop. A man pushed a cart of scrap metal, wheels rattling over cracks. Gabriel felt his own discomfort rise, reflexive and ugly. This is what his father meant. The voice whispered, "This is where stories are born." He hated that the voice still lived in him. They turned onto a street that looked tired. The pavement was spider-webbed with old repairs. The winter light made everything gray. The car slowed. Myers Pharmacy. It was smaller than he expected. A simple building with a faded sign. A handwritten poster in the front window advertised flu shots. The letters were uneven. The glass had smudges where hands had leaned. Gabriel told the driver to stop across the lot. The Mercedes idled. The engine vibration thrummed up through the seat into his bones. He watched people go in and out. An elderly man shuffled toward the entrance, shoulders hunched, clutching something in his fist like it might be taken away. A young mother stepped out with a plastic bag and a toddler pressed against her hip. The child's shoes looked too thin for the weather. Gabriel's eyes flicked to the pharmacy sign again, as if it might change into something more dramatic. It stayed ordinary. His stomach tightened with confusion. He had expected a move that fit his narrative. A cash withdrawal, a luxury store, something with speed and greed. Instead, he was sitting in a luxury car, watching a pharmacy door open and close like a slow blink. His phone buzzed again. Gabriel froze. Then he looked down. Another transaction alert. His thumb tapped it open with a precision that felt like fear. Pullman Fresh Market. He read the amount and felt something cold settle in his chest. $62.34. Groceries. He stared at the merchant category code, as if it might reveal a trick. Standard groceries. No alcohol. No lottery. No cash back. He looked up through the windshield at the pharmacy again. A man stepped out, holding a small paper bag. He moved carefully, like his body had learned to protect itself from pain. Gabriel's mind tried to force the old interpretation back into place. A setup, a performance, a con in slow motion. But the numbers did not fit. $62 in groceries was not a con. It was dinner. It was breakfast. It was a week, if you stretched it. His driver glanced back, uncertain. "Are we waiting here?" Gabriel did not answer. He kept watching the pharmacy door, then the flow of people around it. He realized he had never once sat still in a place like this, without an agenda, without a deal, without a transaction that benefited him. The car interior smelled like leather and faint cologne. Outside, the air looked colder. The light looked harsher. The people looked like they carried weight on their faces. Gabriel's phone buzzed again. He did not breathe. Another alert. Kids First Outlet. $47.18. His throat went tight. He lifted his eyes from the screen and stared at the pharmacy, at the cracked asphalt, at the uneven paint, at the small, ordinary door. A question formed in his mind, quiet but relentless. What could possibly matter so much that the first thing she bought was not escape? The answer was not on his screen yet, but the city around him was starting to smell like something he had never learned to name. And the longer he sat there, the more his wealth felt less like power and more like distance. Gabriel opened his laptop on the passenger seat and tethered it to his phone. The screen lit his hands an anemic blue while the car idled, a steady purr that made the silence feel more deliberate. He pulled up the premium transaction feed, the one that did not just list charges, but offered merchant codes, addresses, and receipts when available. The kind of detail meant to reassure a man like him that nothing could happen without his knowledge. A new alert chimed again. The sound was small, clean, engineered to be painless. It still landed like a slap. Walgreens, State Street, $31.16. He stared, waiting for the pattern to turn, waiting for the first irrational leap, waiting for an amount that would give him permission to feel vindicated. It did not come. He clicked into the grocery charge. Pullman Fresh Market, item category, standard groceries. No alcohol flag, no lottery code, no cashback. He clicked into the pharmacy charge. Prescription, over-the-counter items, a balance paid in full. The words sat on the screen like a quiet record of need. His chest tightened, not with relief, but with a strange pressure that felt like shame trying to rise before he could stop it. He looked up through the windshield. People moved in and out of the pharmacy with small bags. They did not walk like they were browsing. They walked like they were completing a task that could not be delayed. A man rubbed his hands together for warmth. A woman adjusted a scarf around a child who did not stop coughing. Gabriel's father's voice tried to reassert itself, smooth and confident. A con can look like anything. Patience is part of the game. Gabriel gripped his phone harder. The leather of the steering wheel creaked faintly as his fingers tightened around nothing. He forced himself back to the screen and pulled up the kid's first outlet charge. The merchant category, read children's clothing. He clicked for details again and again, as if persistence could conjure the luxury purchase he expected to find hiding beneath. The car's dashboard clock glowed. The seconds moved forward without caring what he believed. Another alert sounded. Buckley Elementary School District Office, $264.02. Gabriel went still. The amount was not enormous, but it was the first number that made his throat close. He clicked it open, and the description line loaded slowly. School lunch account payment, partial balance, brought current through end of March. He read it twice, then a third time. The words refused to become anything else. His mind tried to create distance, tried to turn it into a concept he could manage. Lunch account, a simple administrative thing, a small line item in the day of a child he had never met. Then the reality slipped in under the door. A child had been going to school hungry enough for a debt to exist. Gabriel's stomach rolled, and for a moment he tasted something sour in the back of his mouth. Not fear, something uglier, something that felt like culpability. He looked back at the pharmacy. The building looked cheaper than his shoes. The sign was sun-faded. The lot was cracked. A handwritten poster advertised flu shots for $29. The ink had bled slightly from moisture. This was where the first purchase happened. Not an escape, not a splurge, not a blow to his pride. A necessity. His phone vibrated again. Not a new charge this time, just the device shifting in his grip, like it was impatient with him. He opened his own recent transactions without meaning to. A steakhouse dinner, a wine shipment, dry cleaning, a haircut with tip. The totals stacked up fast, careless, unexamined. He could not remember the taste of the dinner, but he could see every line on Alice's list with brutal clarity. He shut his eyes for a beat and listened to the car idle. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb, its doors folded open with a soft, pneumatic sigh. A few people stepped down, shoulders hunched, hands full, moving with the efficiency of those who do not have time to drift. Gabriel reopened the district payment and took a screenshot. He did it the way he did everything, methodically, as if capturing proof could bring him control back. The image saved with a timestamp in his camera roll, Evidence. Preserved. Even though he did not yet understand what he was building a case against. He checked the other charges again, this time not searching for betrayal, but searching for one selfish line he could point to and call human nature. A coffee, a perfume, a salon, anything? Something small, just enough to let him keep his story. There was nothing. He imagined the receipts without seeing them. Paper folded into a pocket, ink smudged by nervous fingers. The thought was so specific it startled him. He doesn't see it yet. Each receipt is folded by timestamp, ink still fresh. The sentence landed in his mind with the certainty of a fact. He did not know why. He only knew it felt true, and that made him uneasy. Across the lot, the pharmacy door opened again. A woman stepped out and paused, looking down at her bag like she was counting what the world had allowed her to carry home. Then she tucked it close and walked faster. Gabriel watched her go and felt the distance between his world and this one, like a physical gap. He had crossed neighborhoods his entire life without crossing that gap. He had built towers. He had bought land. He had collected power. None of it had taught him how to read a $40 charge without suspicion. He clicked into the pharmacy charge once more. The item categories loaded. Clinical and plain. Prescription medication. Generic. Children's vitamins. Pain reliever. The ordinary tools of staying alive. Gabriel leaned back in the seat. The leather sighed under his weight. His reflection hovered faintly in the windshield, superimposed over the pharmacy. A clean face over a tired block. He looked like a man who had mistaken distance for safety. He wanted to call Jennifer. He wanted to call anyone. He wanted a voice to tell him what this meant, so he could stop feeling it in his chest. Instead, he sat there and let the transactions line up in his mind like a row of small stones, leading somewhere he did not want to go. Not because it was dangerous, because it was true. Gabriel stayed in the car until the sky began to thin toward late afternoon. The light over the parking lot turned flatter, more honest, as if the day was losing patience with beauty. The Mercedes engine idled steadily, a soft vibration under his ribs. The leather smelled like money. Outside, the air looked sharp enough to crack skin. He watched the pharmacy door open and close. People moved with purpose. No one wandered. No one browsed. Every step looked measured, as if time itself cost something. A woman in a worn coat came out holding a small bag and stopped near the curb. She looked down inside it for a second, then pressed it to her chest and walked faster. A man in a knit cap lingered by the window, reading the flu shot sign twice, then turning away with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Gabriel had spent years believing he understood human behavior. He had negotiated with men who smiled while lying. He had watched partners shake hands and steal with the other. He had built towers by predicting what people would do when incentives were placed in front of them. None of that helped him read what he was seeing now. His phone lay in his palm like a living thing. He scrolled through the transaction list again, as if repetition would finally reveal the hidden vice. The charges were still modest, still specific, still stubbornly practical. His mind kept reaching for a familiar story, a con that started small, a performance meant to lower his guard. His father's voice stayed near the surface, ready to snap into place. Then the phone vibrated again. Gabriel froze. He held his breath without deciding to. The alert banner slid down across the screen. He opened it. Myers Pharmacy. Another entry. Not the same charge. A different amount. The item category loaded as over the counter. The total was small, too small to matter to him, but it mattered enough to exist. He stared at it, then glanced up at the pharmacy window, at the handwritten posters, at the tired paint. The details did not match the cruelty he had expected. They matched a person trying to fill gaps. His phone vibrated again, almost immediately. Not a full chime, just a hard pulse. He opened the next alert. Pullman Fresh Market. Groceries again. Another careful number. Another quiet refusal to become indulgence. Gabriel's throat tightened. A small sound escaped him. Half laugh, half disbelief. And it died in the empty car. He looked around the parking lot. People pushed carts with a few bags. Not overflowing. Not excessive. He watched a woman count bills in her palm before walking inside. Her lips moved as if she was doing math without paper. Survival. Math. He had heard that phrase in his head and hated how accurately it described the posture of everyone out here. His own hunger was different. It was for certainty. He wanted to be right. He wanted his suspicion to be justified so he could return to the clean simplicity of his father's doctrine. But each alert made that doctrine feel less like wisdom and more like an excuse. A child's coat, groceries, medication, school supplies, lunch payment. He kept seeing the list without looking at it. The way the mind repeats the last thing it cannot digest. His driver shifted slightly, sensing tension. "Do you want to head back?" Gabriel did not answer. He watched the pharmacy door again. The glass slid open. A burst of warmer air spilled out. He could almost imagine the smell inside. Disinfectant, paper, cough drops, the faint sweetness of children's syrup. His phone buzzed again. Gabriel's fingers tightened around it, knuckles whitening. He opened the alert, expecting another necessity, another small cut to the story he had believed. The amount was $50. The merchant name loaded beneath it. Women's Transitional Housing Center of Bronzeville. Gabriel stared at the words until they stopped being language and became impact. $50. A donation. His mouth went dry. He read it again. Then again. The screen did not change. The charge did not turn into something else. It stayed what it was. He set the phone down on the center console as if it were too heavy to hold. His hands began to shake, not violently, but enough that he noticed, enough that he could not pretend. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb, doors opening with a soft pneumatic sigh. People stepped down, shoulders hunched, bags swinging lightly, each one carrying what the day allowed. A child hopped off the last step and grabbed her mother's sleeve. The mother pulled her close without looking around, a reflex that came from living where you watched without choosing to. Gabriel leaned back in the seat. The leather creaked. He stared through the windshield at the pharmacy, but he could not see it anymore. He saw a different image, one that rose from memory with cruel clarity. A winter afternoon in Wetka. He was 11. Snow dusted the hedges outside their house, perfect and trimmed. A man had knocked on the door and asked for $40 for a tow. His voice had been apologetic. His coat had been thin. He had promised to pay it back. Richard Charlton had not hesitated. He had closed the door without giving the man time to finish his sentence. Later, in the study that smelled of leather and certainty, his father had spoken as if teaching a law of nature. The poor always have a story. If you give, they will bleed you dry. Gabriel had believed him because belief felt safer than doubt. Now he looked at the $50 donation and felt something in his chest split cleanly down the middle. Not pity, not admiration, something worse. A realization that the test was not revealing a woman's character. It was revealing his. He sat in the car while the city moved on around him, while the afternoon light sank lower, while the engine idled like a heartbeat that refused to calm. A woman with nothing had been given access to everything for a day, and she had given money away. Gabriel closed his eyes and swallowed hard. The air inside the car suddenly felt thinner, as if wealth had not been oxygen at all, but insulation, a layer that kept him from feeling what was real. When he opened his eyes again, the pharmacy was still there, ordinary, unimpressed. His phone lay on the console, screen dark now, but Gabriel could still see the words behind his eyelids. Women's Transitional Housing Center, $50. And he understood that he was no longer waiting for her to betray him. He was waiting for himself to become someone he could live with. Gabriel returned to the penthouse after dark, but the lights did not make it feel warm. The city glittered beyond the glass, like scattered coins on black velvet, bright and unreachable at the same time. Inside, the silence felt heavier than the furniture. Even the art on the walls looked like it was waiting to be questioned. He did not turn on music. He did not pour a drink. He walked straight to the kitchen and set his phone on the marble, as if placing evidence at a crime scene. The screen lit, then dimmed, then lit again as he woke it. The donation line stayed there in his recent activity, plain and final. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleanser, like a reminder of hands that worked here and left no trace until tonight. He opened his laptop and pulled up the transaction feed again, not because he expected anything new, but because his mind kept trying to reject what it had already seen. He scrolled slowly. Each charge looked modest enough to be forgettable. Together they formed a pattern he could not escape. He printed the list. The printer whirred in the quiet, a mechanical hum that sounded obscene in a home built for silence. Paper slid out one sheet at a time, warm at the edges. He lined the pages up on the counter, smoothing them flat with his palm, as if he could press the truth into a shape he understood. His own hand looked too clean against the paper. He went to his closet and stared at the row of suits that hung like armor. He thought about what he had spent on dry cleaning in the last month. He thought about the way he bought time with services, bought quiet with money, bought distance from discomfort. He returned to the kitchen and looked at the receipts again, and his stomach turned. He did not sleep. He sat in his office chair facing the window, watching the river in the dark. The water reflected city lights like broken glass. His phone rested on the desk. He did not refresh anymore. There was nothing left to catch. The waiting had shifted. Now the waiting was for morning, for consequences, for a conversation he could not price his way out of. Hours passed in fragments. The hum of the building, the faint whir of the refrigerator, the occasional distant siren that sounded like it belonged to another planet. He tried to read. He tried to work. He could not hold a sentence in his mind. The donation line kept returning to him, not as information, but as weight. Near dawn, he heard the soft click of the front door. Gabriel's body went still. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was earlier than she normally arrived. The building was quiet enough that footsteps carried. He stood before he decided to. His legs felt stiff, as if he had been braced for impact all night. Alice's footsteps moved through the entryway. Coat fabric whispered. A bag rustled softly. Then the kitchen light flicked on, casting a clean rectangle across the marble. Gabriel walked in and stopped. Alice stood by the counter in her coat, hair pulled back too tightly, eyes red, as if she had cried, and then forced herself to stop. The black card lay on the marble between them. Beside, it was a small stack of receipts, folded neatly, squared at the edges, organized like a confession. Her hands hovered near the papers, trembling. "I wrote everything down," she said quickly. Her voice was rough from lack of sleep. "In case you needed proof, in case you thought I was hiding something." Gabriel stared at the stack. Paper? Time stamps. His throat tightened so hard he could not speak. Alice pushed the receipts toward him with 2 fingers, careful, like she was sliding evidence across a table in a room that could decide her fate. "Diana needed her medicine," she said. She did not pause to see if he approved. The words spilled out in a controlled rush. "She has asthma. I had been rationing her inhaler. I had been praying she would not have an attack before payday. I paid the balance at the pharmacy because they would not fill it any more. She swallowed, and her jaw clenched, as if she hated herself for having to say any of this out loud. She needed a coat. She needed shoes. She needed food that was not just the cheapest thing. She needed supplies for school. She needed her lunch account paid, so she could stop pretending she already ate. The last sentence landed like a punch. Gabriel's gaze dropped to the receipts. His hands shook as he picked them up. The paper was thin. The ink was ordinary. The fold lines were sharp from careful fingers. Each one was dated. Each one was proof. Alice's eyes stayed on his face, scanning for judgment. "I did not buy anything for myself," she said. "I know you expected me to. I know that was the point, but I could not." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she did not let it break. "My daughter is watching me," Alice said. "She is 8. She sees what I do. I need her to see someone who does not take what she does not need. Someone who does not become greedy just because an opportunity appears." Gabriel lifted his eyes. The kitchen felt too bright. The marble looked too clean. The stack of receipts sat there like a mirror he had been avoiding his entire life. Alice wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, angry at the tear, as if it betrayed her. "I knew it was a test. Mr. Charlton," she said. "I knew you wanted to see if I would take advantage. If poor people are monsters when no one is watching." The word monster made something in Gabriel's chest collapse. Alice's voice steadied, quieter now, but sharper. "I decided not to be," she said. "Not because I wanted to impress you. Not because I wanted to keep my job. Because my daughter deserves better than that lesson." Gabriel looked down at the receipts again. The donation was there too. Another thin strip of paper. Another timestamp. Another quiet choice. He could not hold the weight of it in his hands without feeling the weight of himself. His voice finally came, low and raw. "I gave you the card to prove my father right," Gabriel said. "To prove that people only behave when money is watching them." Alice met his eyes without flinching. "I know," she said. The silence between them was not expensive anymore. It was honest. It was the kind of silence that did not let anyone hide. And in that silence, Gabriel understood that the receipts were not just proof of what she had done, they were proof of what he had been. Gabriel kept the receipts in his hands a moment longer than he needed to, as if the thin paper could steady him. The ink smelled faintly chemical, fresh and ordinary. The folds were sharp, deliberate. Each crease looked like a decision made under pressure. Alice stood across the marble counter, shoulders squared, eyes swollen but steady. She had stopped apologizing. The shift was small, but it changed the entire room. Gabriel set the stack down carefully, aligning the corners. The gesture was too precise. It was what he did when he wanted control back. He did not get it. His throat worked. He swallowed once, and it felt loud in the bright kitchen. "I did not think you were a monster," he said. The lie sounded weak the moment it left him. Alice's expression did not change. She did not argue. She simply looked at him as if she had lived inside his assumptions long enough to recognize them without needing them spoken. "You did," she said. "Not as a person. As a category." The words hit him with quiet accuracy. He felt them land behind his ribs and spread. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. The air felt thin, like the building had stopped supplying it properly. Alice's gaze dropped to the donation receipt, then lifted back to him. "I gave that because I know what it feels like," she said, "to almost have nowhere. To look at your child and realize love does not pay rent." Gabriel's fingers flexed against the edge of the counter. The marble was cold. He used to like that. Cold meant clean. Cold meant controlled. Now it felt like a rebuke. He looked at her hands. The skin around her nails was rough. There were faint stains that did not wash out easily, the kind left by cleaning products and work that never ended. He tried to picture those hands holding the card the day before, and he felt sick at how he had framed that moment as entertainment for his doubt. "I made it a test," he said, voice low. "I dressed cruelty up as curiosity." Alice's jaw tightened. She nodded once, as if acknowledging what she already knew. "You wanted proof," she said. "You wanted a story that let you stay safe." The word tasted wrong in his mouth. His life was the definition of safe. Locks, cameras, contracts, lawyers, insurance. It had never felt like safety. It had felt like suffocation with expensive furniture. A thin ticking drifted into the kitchen again, muffled but persistent. It sounded like time reminding him he could not undo anything by thinking. If he stayed his father's son, he would lose the only thing still human in him. The sentence rose in his mind with the clarity of a verdict. It did not feel dramatic. It felt factual. Gabriel turned his head and stared out at the city through the glass. The lake was a dark sheet in the distance. Cars moved below like blood cells through bright arteries. Everything functioned. Everything kept going. It did not care who learned the truth too late. When he looked back, Alice was watching him without flinching. She looked tired, but not small. "I am sorry," Gabriel said. The words sounded too simple for what they carried. He almost hated them for that. Alice's expression softened by a fraction, not into forgiveness, but into something closer to exhaustion. "Sorry does not pay for medicine," she said. "Sorry does not make a school treat my child like she belongs." Gabriel felt heat sting behind his eyes. He blinked hard, as if blinking could force the feeling back into its proper compartment. "You are right," he said. Jennifer's voice echoed faintly in his memory, talking about parameters, legal protection, documentation. He thought of every way he had tried to protect himself from being moved. Alice shifted her weight, and her coat rustled. The sound was small, but it reminded him she had come here early, probably without sleeping, carrying paper evidence, because she expected to be doubted. Her dignity had been doing work his money never did. Gabriel's chair scraped behind him as he pushed it back without meaning to. The sound was harsh. Alice's shoulders tensed, instinctive. For a second he saw it. The reflex of someone who had learned that sudden movements from powerful men could mean punishment. That reflex was his legacy. He stopped moving. "I am not angry," he said quickly. Alice did not relax. Not fully. Gabriel looked down at the black card on the marble, still sitting there like a border. "Come with me," he said. Alice's eyes widened. "I do not understand." "Bring Diana here after school today," he said. Alice's breath caught, and suspicion flared across her face like a match. She said, "Absolutely not." The word was sharp, protective. It carried the force of a mother defending a door. Gabriel held her gaze. "I am not asking for anything from her," he said. "I am not asking for anything from you. I am offering help, real help." Alice shook her head once. "I cannot accept charity," she said. "Not like this. It is not charity," Gabriel said. His voice broke on the last syllable, and he hated that it did. He hated that emotion had become visible in his house, on his marble, in his life. "It is an apology," he said, "for not seeing you, for turning you into a theory, for making your survival into a lesson I could study from a distance." Alice stared at him, and for the first time he saw fear and anger in equal measure. "Rich men do not apologize," she said. "Not without wanting something." Gabriel inhaled slowly. The air smelled faintly of cleanser and warm printer paper. It smelled like work. It smelled like the truth. "You are right," he said. "Most of the time, they do not. Most of the time, I did not." Alice's fingers curled at her sides, and her nails pressed into her palms. "What do you want?" "Mr. Charlton," Gabriel looked at the receipts again, then back at her. I want to stop being the man who needed those receipts, he said. I want to stop being the man who made you prove you deserve to breathe. Silence stretched. The clock kept ticking somewhere deeper in the penthouse, relentless and dry. Alice's voice dropped, cautious. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Gabriel's chest tightened. He forced the words out cleanly. By helping you build stability, he said. Not a one-day gift, not a test. A change that stays when I am not watching. Alice's eyes glistened again, but her chin stayed lifted. Say it plainly, she said. No speeches. Gabriel nodded once. Bring Diana after school, he repeated. Let me meet her. Let me hear what you need. Then I will do it without conditions. Alice hesitated. The hesitation was not weakness. It was calculation. The same survival math he had seen outside the pharmacy. Only now it was about trust. She looked at the black card again. Then at the receipts. Then at him. No more tests, she said. Gabriel's voice came out rough. No more tests. Alice held his gaze another beat, as if searching for the trap he promised was gone. Then she gave a small, exhausted nod. After school, she said, one visit, and then we talk. Gabriel exhaled, slow and shaky, like he had been holding his breath for years. He watched her pick up the receipts and tuck them back into her bag, not because she needed them anymore, but because she had learned not to leave her proof behind. And as she turned toward the hall, coat whispering, footsteps light against marble, Gabriel understood the true cost of what he had done. He had spent a lifetime buying control. Now he had to earn trust without purchasing it. At 4 o'clock, the penthouse door opened with a soft latch click that sounded too delicate for how tight Alice felt inside. Her hand stayed on Diana's shoulder, not guiding so much as anchoring. The marble floor reflected them back, smaller than the room, smaller than the view, smaller than the quiet. Diana's eyes widened. She looked up at the ceiling, then at the windows, then at the lake beyond them, as if it were a picture on a screen. Her sneakers squeaked once on the polished stone. She froze, embarrassed, then pressed closer to her mother's leg. Is this where you work? Diana whispered. Alice's throat tightened. Gabriel walked in from the hall without a suit. Jeans, a sweater, hair slightly out of place, like he had been running his hands through it all day. He stopped a few feet away, palms open at his sides, as if he was trying to show he did not plan to take up the air. He lowered himself to one knee. The fabric of his jeans creased softly. His watch flashed once in the light, and then looked suddenly unnecessary. You must be Diana, he said. His voice was gentler than Alice expected, still careful, like he did not trust himself. Diana stared at him with the blunt assessment of a child. Then she glanced up at Alice, checking for danger. Mama says you are busy, Diana said, and important. Gabriel's mouth pulled into something that almost looked like a smile. It did not reach his eyes. I used to think busy meant important, he said. I am learning something else. A beat of silence settled. The building hum filled it. Far away, an elevator ding sounded faintly, a reminder that the world still moved, even when people tried to change. Alice kept her hand on Diana's shoulder. One visit, she said quietly. Then we talk. Gabriel nodded once. One visit. 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened at street level with a brighter ding. Chicago air rushed in, colder than the penthouse, sharp with exhaust and winter. Diana's breath puffed white as she stepped out, eyes still wide, still collecting the newness of everything. The car ride was quiet. The leather seats smelled clean and expensive. Diana swung her feet, too short to touch the floor. Alice watched the city outside the window change, block by block. as if the glass could turn distance into safety. When they arrived at the grocery store, the automatic doors parted with a hiss. Warm air rolled out, smelling of bread, citrus, and disinfectant. Cartwheels rattled over the entrance grooves. A scanner beep sang somewhere near the registers, steady and repetitive. Gabriel followed behind them, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly tense. He looked out of place in a way people noticed without staring, not because of his clothes alone, but because his body moved like it expected space to clear. Alice grabbed a cart. The handle was cold, slightly sticky. She pushed forward with practiced speed, Diana's small hand slipping into hers automatically. They moved into produce. Misted greens glistened under harsh lights. Water dripped in tiny, steady ticks into a drain, a softer echo of the penthouse clock. Alice reached for carrots. Loose, not pre-cut. Diana watched her fingers move, like she had seen it 1,000 times. "Why not the bag ones?" Diana asked, pointing at the peeled sticks. Alice checked the price tag. "These are cheaper," she said. "We can wash them at home." Diana nodded without complaint, then pointed at oranges. "Can we get these?" Alice lifted one, weighed it in her palm, then put 3 into a thin plastic bag that crackled loudly. She twisted the top and tied it off with a quick knot, fingers moving, like this was not choice but math. Gabriel watched without speaking. His gaze tracked each decision, not as judgment, but as if he was trying to learn a language his money had kept him from hearing. In the aisle, Diana tugged Alice's sleeve. "Can we get the strawberry yogurt? The kind with the fruit on the bottom?" Alice paused. Her eyes flicked to the shelf label. She did the calculation in her face before her lips moved. "Not today. But we can get plain yogurt, and I will cut strawberries at home. It will be better." Diana considered it, then shrugged. Gabriel's jaw tightened. A tiny sound escaped him, almost a breath held too long. He looked away for a second, blinking hard, as if the store lights were too bright. They reached meat. Alice chose a whole chicken instead of boneless pieces. She turned it in her hands, reading the price sticker, then placed it into a thin bag that squeaked as she pulled it over the plastic tray. She added rice, beans, bread, staples, weight. Survival turned into items. At checkout, the conveyor belt thumped softly as items moved forward. The cashier's hands worked fast. Each scan sounded like a small decision becoming permanent. Alice kept her shoulders tight. Diana stood close, counting the beeps like a game. The total appeared on the screen, $53.18. Alice's hand went to her coat pocket and came back with the black card. Her fingers trembled as she slid it toward the reader. Gabriel did not speak. He stood beside the card machine, watching her face, watching the muscles in her jaw, watching the way her eyes stayed on the screen, as if approval could decide more than groceries. The reader chirped. Approved. Alice exhaled slowly, like her lungs had been braced for impact. The receipt printer whirred, then spit out paper with a sharp tear. The cashier handed it over. Alice took it with 2 fingers. The receipt was warm and stamped with a timestamp at the top. She folded it once, without thinking, the same precise fold as her other receipts. Gabriel reached out, not for the card, but for the paper. "May I?" he asked. Alice hesitated, then handed it to him. He held the receipt carefully, eyes on the printed time. He lifted his phone and took a photo close enough that the date and minute were unmistakable on screen. The camera shutter sound was soft but final. He did not send it anywhere. He simply saved it, as if he was learning that truth needed no embellishment, only proof. Outside, the wind cut across the parking lot. Bags rustled. A cart slammed gently into a corral with a metallic clank. Diana hugged the grocery bag with the yogurt inside, as if it were treasure. Gabriel stopped walking. "Alice, that is not enough food," he said. Alice's defenses rose immediately. "It is enough. I know how to make it stretch." Diana looked between them, uncertain. Gabriel's voice stayed low. But something in it had changed. Not control, not performance. Something closer to regret. "She should not have to stretch meals," he said. "She should not have to learn that wanting something small is dangerous." Alice swallowed. Her eyes burned. "You do not understand," she said. Gabriel nodded once. "You are right. I do not. But I am standing here because I want to." He looked at Diana, then back at Alice. "Tell me what stability looks like for you," he said. "Not for today. For every day after." Alice tightened her grip on the cart handle. Her fingers pressed into the cold metal. "No more tests," she said. Gabriel's answer came fast, like he had been waiting for the words. "No more tests." Diana's small hand slid back into Alice's, warm through the glove. The grocery receipt photo sat saved on Gabriel's phone, timestamp visible, proof of a moment that could not be bought back, only carried forward. Backstage at the National Press Club, the air smelled like hairspray, coffee, and warmed electrical equipment. Lights bled under the curtain in a pale strip. Somewhere beyond it, voices rose and fell in a steady, impatient murmur, the sound of an audience waiting to be given a story. Gabriel stood near a folding table covered in water bottles and printed programs. His hands were shaking. He adjusted his tie once, then again, then stopped when he realized he was doing it like a compulsion. The silk felt too tight, not because it was, but because his throat had forgotten how to breathe without control. Alice stood beside him in a navy dress she had chosen herself. The fabric sat clean on her shoulders, not borrowed dignity, not purchased pity. She kept her spine straight, one hand resting lightly on the strap of her bag, as if she had learned never to set her life down where someone else could move it. Diana sat in the front row, small legs swinging above the floor, a handmade sign in her lap. The marker ink looked thick and uneven. "My mama helps people." The letters were a little crooked. The certainty behind them was not. Gabriel's eyes kept going to the envelope in his hand. Plain paper. No logo. No sheen. Inside were thin receipts that felt heavier than any contract he had ever signed. Alice glanced up at him. "You are going to be fine," she said. Gabriel's mouth twitched. "I am terrified," Alice said. "That means you care." A stage manager gave a subtle nod. The moderator stepped to the podium out front, her voice carrying through the curtain with professional warmth. Gabriel heard his name. He heard applause begin like rain, scattered at first, then louder, filling the room. His feet moved before his mind finished arguing. He walked onto the stage, and the lights hit him hard, washing out the audience into a field of silhouettes. Cameras lined the back wall like eyes. Microphones waited on the podium, red lights blinking, ready to record every mistake. He stood behind the lectern and placed his envelope on the surface. The paper made a soft, dry sound. Too small, too loud. He looked out and found Alice. She was not smiling. She was steady. Gabriel leaned closer to the microphones. "Thank you for being here," he said. His voice held, but only barely. "I am not going to pretend I have always been a good man." A ripple of movement moved through the crowd. A few journalists leaned forward. Pens lifted. Gabriel's fingers slid under the envelope flap. He pulled out a single receipt first. It was creased and worn, folded and unfolded enough times to soften the edges. The paper crackled faintly as he straightened it. He held it up. "This is the most important document I have ever owned," he said. Flash, flash, flash. Camera shutters stuttered like teeth chattering. "It is from a neighborhood pharmacy," Gabriel continued, "and it cost less than my lunch." He paused. The silence that followed was not polite. It was hungry. "6 months ago," he said, "I handed my housekeeper my personal credit card for 1 day. No limits, no rules, no surveillance." A murmur spread, quick and sharp. It was the sound of people recognizing the cruelty before he named it. "I told myself it was generosity," Gabriel said. "It was not. It was a test." He let the words sit there. He felt it land in the room like a weight dropping onto bone. "I expected her to take advantage," he said. "I expected her to prove something ugly I had been taught to believe, that people are only decent when money is watching." His eyes flicked down to the receipt in his hand. The ink was slightly faded near the fold. "Instead," he said, "she bought medication for her child, groceries, shoes, a winter coat, school supplies, and she paid a school lunch debt so her daughter could eat." He looked up again, and this time he did not look at the crowd. He looked at Alice. "Her name is Alice Donovan," Gabriel said. "She is here today." Alice did not wave. She did not perform gratitude. She met the audience with a calm that did not ask for permission. Gabriel's hand trembled harder. He steadied it by placing the receipt back on the lectern. The paper stuck slightly to the surface, then released with a soft sound. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen glow lit his face faintly from below. He turned it toward the microphones and then toward the front row, angling it so the cameras could catch it. On the screen was a photo of a grocery receipt. The timestamp at the top was clear, captured close enough that the minute could not be argued. He swiped once. Another image. Another timestamp. A district payment confirmation. A donacine confirmation. He did not narrate each one. He did not need to. The evidence spoke in small, unglamorous numbers. The room went quieter. The kind of quiet that happens when people realize the truth is simple and therefore impossible to escape. Gabriel lowered the phone. "I have built glass towers," he said. "I have signed deals worth more money than most families will see in a lifetime. None of it ever forced me to face who I was." He swallowed, his voice roughened. "This did," he said, and tapped the receipt with one finger. It made a soft paper sound under the microphone. "Because the truth is not that she proved she was worthy," Gabriel said. "The truth is, I proved I was not." A few people exhaled like they had been holding their breath. Gabriel's shoulders shifted, as if he had decided to stop carrying the old posture. "I cannot fix poverty with a credit card," he said. "But I can stop using money to control people. I can stop turning dignity into something that has to be earned in front of someone like me." He reached into the envelope again and pulled out one more slip, smaller, simpler. "This is a $50 donation," he said. "She made it to a women's transitional housing center." A low sound moved through the room. Not applause. Something closer to disbelief. "She gave away money she did not have," Gabriel said, "because she remembered what nothing feels like." His hands stopped shaking for a moment. The steadiness felt unfamiliar, like a new muscle. "So today," he said, "I am announcing the Charlton Workforce Trust. Living wage support, childcare, housing stability, training pathways, and an advisory board led by people who have actually lived what policy likes. To summarize." He looked at Alice again. "Alice Donovan will help lead it," Gabriel said, "not as a symbol, as authority." The applause that started this time was different. It was not automatic. It was earned, uneven at first, then louder, building like a wave. Gabriel stepped back from the microphone slightly, and something in him overreached in the best way. He abandoned the safe script, the polished lines he had prepared. He let the raw truth come out. My father taught me that trust is weakness, he said. That generosity without control is stupidity. I believed him for decades because it made my emptiness feel like wisdom. He shook his head once, small and final. He was wrong, Gabriel said, and if I have any power worth keeping, it is the power to stop being him. He set the receipt down on the lectern like closing a case file. The paper made one last, quiet crackle. In the front row, Diana lifted her sign higher, small arms straining, marker ink, bold, against white poster board. Gabriel saw it, and his throat tightened again, but this time he did not fight it. The cameras kept flashing, but for the first time in his life, Gabriel did not feel watched. He felt accountable. 6 weeks later, the apartment hallway smelled like fresh paint and warm laundry. The building was quiet in a normal way, not the kind of quiet that felt like money holding its breath. A neighbor's television murmured behind a door. Someone's dinner smelled like onions and butter, close enough to touch. Alice stood in the doorway of a 2-bedroom place with sunlight on the floor. The windows faced a street lined with trees, branches bare but steady. The air inside was warmer than the stairwell, and the heat arrived without a fight. Diana ran ahead and stopped in the middle of the living room, arms wide as if she was measuring space with her whole body. "My own room," she said, voice rising. "My own room with a door." Alice's throat tightened. She pressed her palm to the wall near the entry, feeling the paint texture under her skin. Real and slightly rough. Not marble, not polished, not pretending to be eternal. She inhaled and caught the scent of cardboard from unpacked boxes and the faint sweetness of a new shower curtain. She said, "Your own room." Diana darted down the short hall, sneakers thudding softly on the floor. A door opened. A gasp, then a laugh that sounded like it had been stored up for years. "Can I put my planet book on the shelf?" Diana called. "You can put it anywhere," Alice said, and surprised herself by smiling. A knock came a moment later, gentle and ordinary, not the heavy, entitled knock of someone used to being answered. Alice opened the door. Gabriel stood in the hall with a plain paper bag in one hand and a smaller one in the other. No suit, no sharp edges. His sweater looked soft. His hair was slightly wind-pushed. He looked like a man trying to fit into a life that did not rearrange itself for him. "I was nearby," he said, and then paused, as if he could hear how thin the excuse sounded. "I brought a few things." Alice did not move aside right away. Old instincts flared. Offers had costs. Help had hooks. Gabriel waited. He did not step forward. He did not look past her shoulder, like the apartment belonged to him. Alice finally nodded once, and he entered. The living room was still half empty. Boxes sat stacked against one wall. A folded blanket lay on the couch, bright with a pattern Diana had chosen. The space looked modest, but it looked alive. Gabriel set the bags on the counter in the small kitchen. Paper crinkled. He pulled out milk, bread, oranges, a bundle of carrots still dusty at the ends, staples, familiar. Then he reached into the smaller bag and placed 3 6-packs of yogurt on the counter, fruit on the bottom, bright labels. Diana appeared at the doorway like a spark. "Strawberry," she said, eyes wide, "and blueberry, and peach." Gabriel's mouth lifted into a small smile. "I remembered," he said. Diana rushed forward and hugged the yogurt to her chest, as if it were a stuffed animal. The plastic was cold against her cheek. "Thank you," she said, and then ran back down the hall to show it off to her new room, like it was proof of a miracle. Alice stared at the yogurt for a moment longer than she meant to. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard. "You do not have to do this," she said. Gabriel looked at the counter, not at her. "I know," he said. "That is why I am trying to do it differently." Alice crossed her arms, a reflex to protect herself. Differently. How? Gabriel reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Not glossy, not branded, just paper. He set it on the counter and slid it toward her with 2 fingers, the way she had slid receipts once. Inside is the lease information, he said. It is in your name. You sign if you want. No one is doing you a favor. This is an agreement with a property manager who works with families transitioning into stability. Rent you can handle. A location near good schools. Nothing hidden. Alice did not open it yet. She stared at it like it might change shape. And the job? She asked. Gabriel nodded. Training program. Childcare included. Health insurance. Pathway to management. You do the work. You earn it. The difference is the system is not designed to break you. Alice's chest tightened. She hated how quickly hope tried to rush in. Hope was dangerous. Hope made you careless. Gabriel leaned his hand on the counter, leaving space between them. You asked what stability looks like, he said. You answered without knowing you were answering. Medicine without fear. Food without calculation. A school that treats your child like she belongs. A home where you do not flinch at every knock. Alice swallowed hard. She said, "Why keep showing up?" Gabriel's eyes lifted to hers. There was no performance in them, just weariness and something stubborn. Because I cannot unsee what I saw, he said, and because I do not want to be the man who could. A moment passed. In the other room, Diana's laughter floated down the hall, bright and unguarded. It filled the apartment in a way silence never had. Alice finally opened the envelope. Paper rustled softly. She scanned the pages. The words were plain. Names, dates, terms. Her name, printed cleanly, centered. Her hands trembled. Gabriel stepped back, letting her have the space. He did not explain. He did not narrate. He let the paper speak. Alice looked up. No tests, she said, voice tight. Gabriel nodded once. No tests. Alice exhaled slowly. Then she extended her hand across the counter. If we do this, she said, we do it as equals. Gabriel took her hand. His grip was firm, not possessive. He said, outside the window. Wind stirred the bare branches. The streetlights flickered on, one by one, a calm sequence instead of a warning. In the kitchen, the yogurt sat on the counter like a small, bright promise. Diana ran back in and pressed her sign from the press club against her chest, as if it belonged here now, in this ordinary room. My mama helps people, she whispered, reading it to herself like a spell. Alice watched her daughter breathe easily and felt something settle into place, quiet and solid. Stability did not arrive like a miracle. It arrived like a door that finally stayed closed when you shut it. Basic dignity should never require a billionaire to learn it.